definition of
pull factor rule was a
expulsion
pull
is just
factor.
leaving because of war, then technically everyone was expelled under your definition.
What's the likelihood that that gets them to accept an emirate or a Bantustan?
Immediately, zero. But over time, I would say it would be like, let's take what we can get. In practice, this does imply like our dominance over them. Yeah, there is an element of collective punishment to this. I do not deny that. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Hello.
Oh, I'll probably just talk to you on my own for like a couple of minutes, and then I'll just leave you guys to what you were talking about. I just wanted to ask you, what is this reasoning? That you said something about settlements being a way to pressure Palestinians to give up their national and territorial aspirations. What does that mean?
Oh, so you probably only listened for a few minutes. We were having a much bigger conversation before Sev was on. Like me and Destiny were just arguing. I think as a deterrent, if you said like anytime there's a terrorist attack or anytime it doesn't have to be specifically this as the condition for it, but as like a punishment, it would just be like an annexation of Area C with a settlement built on top of it. You'd have terrorism ending very quickly.
So you think expanding settlements as a punishment for terror acts is what would get Palestinians to give up their national and territorial ambitions? Is that what you mean?
Well, it would maybe not mentally, like they would still want it, sure, but it would get them to stop in terms of the incentive structure overall. But like they would stop.
So basically the Palestinian response would be, oh fuck, if we do terrorism, they are going to fuck us 8 times harder for each terror act. That's why we should stop.
Well, no, it's not the level of violence. It's not like, oh, we killed one person, now they're going to kill like 500 of us. It's like this is something that they've lost many lives in the past before. The issue is that the actual thing that hurts them, which is loss of land and loss of sovereignty on that land and loss of their presence living on that land, that is a much bigger deterrent. That hurts much more in the long term than like, oh, like 20, 30, like whatever thousand Palestinians die.
Okay, so you expand settlements to the point that they learn to stop. What happens next?
Eventually, terrorism stops, and then you can come to some peace agreement.
With what land? Now that you've expanded settlements.
Yeah, they would have lost a lot of land at that point. Yeah,
like they already have.
Lost a lot.
So
it wouldn't necessarily be a two-state solution, by the way, where they would have a contiguous entity that would rule over all the land. It could be some kind of residency arrangement. It could be that emirate plan. It would involve basically them not getting what they want. But whereas previously you said like they wouldn't been willing to accept the emirates plan, now it's like we'll take what we can get. This does involve screwing them over in a sense. Yeah, I don't deny that, but it will achieve stability and peace. And I think the approaches of like the carrot approach just doesn't work.
Can I say,
so there's a no wait. So
yeah.
you're so for some reason, even though Palestinian aggression has resulted in them losing territory for the last 75 years, it has resulted in them having their land shrunk and their possibilities for a contiguous state progressively shrunk. But for some reason, it's going to reach a threshold where suddenly the reaction just changes. I don't understand this. Like, in what world does 3 million people in the West Bank accept an emirate solution or a Bantustan-esque, like, discontiguous entity?
No, so it's not that like since 48 there has not actually been a loss of. Let me explain what I mean by that. I know in 67 obviously the West Bank and Gaza were annexed. The West Bank and Gaza were annexed, but there was not like a one-to-one, like if you try violence, because that was the surrounding Arab states in many cases, and there's still an aspiration they can have a two-state solution on the 67 borders, which is not any more or less land in terms of where they settled than they had before 67 and after 67. Their status quo in that sense has not changed, except in terms of who is the occupier now.
No, this is what they did not even including the wars with other countries. This is what they did after the 48 war all the way up until the Suez Canal crisis, was when there were raids coming in, especially from the West Bank. The response would be to go into the village where the raid came from and destroy all the houses.
Yeah, but that's again, that wasn't part of a policy of systemic annexation as well. Like, sure, the house gets destroyed. They also destroy the houses in the paper slay, whatever the equivalent. You know what I'm talking about, like the policy where the house gets destroyed.
Yeah, but what happens when the houses get destroyed? They moved other people in. That was even part of the 6-day war. Like that was even throughout the entire 5 days of exploiting the fog of war. That was when Diane was encouraging people to blow up houses so that settlers could move in on the land.
Do you know, and how many houses in what you just talked about with Dayan encouraging people to move in on the land in 67, how many houses were like taken over?
It's not whether or not they were taken over. I don't have a number for that, but I have a number for. I can maybe find the number for the amount of houses that were demolished, maybe. And
Like just even an approximation would like help us out
and
here.
land that wasn't moved in on afterwards, right?
No,
I
why
don't
would an
actually know.
approximation help? Isn't it the whole fucking idea and the like idea of it happening was the problem, not the like numbers?
This was a war. The 67 war was not a war that the Palestinians started. So it was not a response to something they did. Like regardless of even how many houses they lost as a result of the war, there's never been this understanding is if you fight, you will continue to lose land, and it's actually a disincentive for you to try to fight. Like
Well,
none of the things you're mentioning really function in the way that I'm talking about.
But here, I have like a contingent here. Like, just because Palestinians don't fight doesn't mean they're not going to lose anything either.
But say it again. I'm sorry.
Just because Palestinians don't fight does not mean they're not going to lose anything either. This
Yeah,
might
but
not
there's
be
no.
true.
It's not happening. Like okay, there
Of
are
course, it's happening
settlements being built.
systemically. There are being settlements
No.
built right now as we speak.
No,
Yeah,
but I
there
think I know
are.
what you're saying. What you're saying is it's never happened as part of an explicit policy where we say we will
Yes,
only
yes.
we will only encroach on this village if a terror attack comes from this village. Is that kind of the policy that you want to see?
It's not even necessarily just that village. It can just be like eating away at the like the edges of area C and like slowly creeping in and annexing more and more of areas. It doesn't have to be deliberately on that village. Like it could be theoretically, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, you think that it'll be, but then obviously, Palestinians who didn't commit that terror attack are going to feel like they got punished for a crime they didn't commit.
Yeah, there is an element of collective punishment to this. I do not deny that. Yeah, but
Okay,
that's
and
why
how
you'd be
are
like,
they
you
going
guys
to
are
feel about
screwing us by
Israel?
doing this terrorism.
They're going to get fucking angry at Israel, aren't they? And then they're probably going to
They're
be
already
quite
angry at
easy
Israel.
to. Yeah, I know it. And then so it's not going to stop. That's the point.
Do you think the level
Yeah,
of
but
anger is
There's
they'll
going
have
to
an
no.
increase?
incentive.
I just want to you understand that there is no world where you implement this policy and Palestinians as a collective suddenly decide, oh fuck, we're going to stop. Or if we haven't done anything anyway, like most of them don't, then we're just going to say, actually, we're not only going to stop doing the thing we weren't doing anyway, but we're also going to, I don't know, just make sure that none of our friends and family become terrorists.
So you can I guess obviously this is a starting point. I've not thought this through. Like we're going to literally implement this tomorrow. I'm sending it to Smotrich and he's going to pass it in the Knesset. But you could add certain clauses in. Like let's say there will be some kind of Palestinian authority. It might not be the one that's right now, but whatever. Some kind of Palestinian central leadership, and obviously they would have to make like a good faith effort to clamp down. And if they did, maybe you wouldn't pass the disincentive in every case, but it would have to be something that systematically causes the Palestinians to stop trying to do terrorism. Like you can amend what I'm saying in a number of ways that would remove some of the, let's say, worst case collective mindset. I'm not a sadist. I know it sounds funny after what you heard me say on Destiny's stream, but I really just want to create an incentive structure that stops violence. And by the way, I would actually support not the same kind of disincentive, but for like unprovoked settler violence, I would be fine with having some kind of disincentive as well.
Can I have a big
So
comment here?
no. One last thing. Okay. I appreciate what you're saying. You're not saying it from a place of like I guess malice or anything like that. It's just the problem is that this approach of like if we take this kind of like carrot stick or the stick approach, basically, it'll eventually knock the sense into Palestinians to accept whatever's left of the West Bank, even if it's discontiguous, even if it's not a state, even if it's more of an emirate, Bantustan, whatever. The problem is that this strategy works if you think Palestinians are retarded 4-year-olds. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
No, they're not retarded.
No, or
They're
even
they're actually rational actors.
actually, it's actually if you think that they're worse than retarded 4-year-olds, because if parents try to teach 4-year-olds by beating them up, the kids get worse. They become more violent, more aggressive, actually, generally. So, yeah, it's just not a reasonable solution. The problem is it's just like it's trying to find a nice way to deal with the fact that there are 3 million people odd living there, and you don't want them to have a state. You don't want to be the person who says kick them all out or kill them all. So you're just trying desperately to
I also
find
don't
some
think
kind
it's
of like
viable anyway.
fantasy where, yeah. But that's the problem is you're trying to find like a nice solution, and that's why you're in this situation now. But
here,
yeah.
I did say like earlier, and he admitted to it. He wasn't looking for like a peaceful solution here. He was looking for like he admitted that he wants like domination is what this is.
Hold on,
And you
I need
admitted
to
that.
clarify this. I need to clarify
But you
this, 'cause
did
I think
say it.
I'm
That's
kind
all
of
I'm
being
gonna say.
flip-shamed. No, I said, yeah, in practice, this does imply like our dominance over them. But even that, it's not, because I would love to not be in a situation where we kind of have to like rule over someone else, or we have to be like the more powerful party within a very small topographically like cohesive region. But I don't see another way, because it feels like when we give them autonomy, like in 2005, things go to hell really quickly.
You didn't really give them
So
autonomy, though, did you? You just, it was a
Yeah.
unilateral pullout that had nothing to do with giving them autonomy. It wasn't a bilateral negotiation. There was no one on the other end of the table. No one had any fucking idea what was going to happen after. That wasn't giving them autonomy.
they did have elections. They did have elections.
They had
They had the
elections in
opportunity
they
to
had
vote for
elections
their own
in
government.
'96 as well, '95. So
No, but they had, okay,
I'm just saying
obviously
you didn't
there
give them
was,
autonomy. Like, for example, how did you get peace with Egypt and how did you get peace with Jordan?
well, those are already autonomous states.
They had
Those are, it's not
states,
really
yeah.
the same kind of
You
situation.
basically said you got your place, we got our place. You got your passports, we've got our passports. That's kind of how they did that.
Yeah, correct.
Whereas what you're saying with the West Bank or Gaza, like you haven't done that, and you're not going to do
The
that. So yeah,
grievances and aspirations are fundamentally different for Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza compared to Egyptians and Jordanians.
How?
Because they believe that they have a claim over the 48 lands in a way that like makes them want to fight over it continuously into the future, in a way that Jordanians and
But
Egyptians don't feel as much incentive structure
I've
to.
already given you examples of why that is not true. Like they might talk about it like that. Like I told you, if you ask them about history, yeah, they'll fucking tell you that land is theirs because they were kicked out of there. Their grandfathers were kicked out of there. But if you talk about forming a state, they're not going to talk about it like that because I told you we suffered the Nakba too within Israel. The fucking the difference is we have autonomy. We live in Israel as citizens and we have better living conditions with a plethora of other fucking reasons why we don't commit violence on Jews or on Israel like they do. Like I told you why that like they want their 48. That's why they will never stop. That is not true. That can't be true.
Also, we don't have we can't just recreate the conditions that led to Israeli citizen Arabs. We can't recreate that
Well, those
in the West
conditions
Bank.
were martial law, then massacres, and then using those massacres as reasoning for why.
Okay,
They
you
can't have
understand what
martial.
I'm trying to say. Don't be bad faith. Like I understand that there was a lot of bad stuff that happened in 48, but that's when I say I'm talking about the integration and the citizenship and the political rights that came after that.
I mean, yeah,
I
you
don't want
can't do
to.
that
I don't want
because
to
we need the
redo the
demographic.
massacres and the Nakba on the West Bank.
yeah, and
That's not what I'm
so you
saying.
can't give voting rights to people in the West Bank, right? It's like that wouldn't be a reasonable
Obviously not.
solution. Obviously not. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
you can't.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Actually, okay, I'll make a concession to you here. If the West Bank without Gaza, I think it could be annexed while still having a Jewish majority. I'm open. I'm genuinely open to that. But it would have to be, they couldn't all have citizenship immediately. It would have to be like a de-radicalization process. But then we also couldn't do the thing where we like
Education
just
counts.
reject their citizenship. Like after 30 years, they all actually would have to become citizens. Like over time, once the next generation was genuinely de-radicalized.
Well,
And
I have a problem with that thing because
your
we already
problem
have we already have a system in place just like that in East Jerusalem, and the process is bullshit. And
No,
if
no,
you don't,
it wouldn't be like that. It wouldn't be like that. It would be like an actual. I understand. I know what you're saying about East Jerusalem. Yeah. No, it would be like actual.
so you know that it takes longer to get citizenship from residency than it takes to convert to Judaism.
Okay, obviously, I'm saying that it would have to be a quicker process. Not quicker in the sense that it would still be like 15, 20, whatever. Just legit. The only concerns I have are like logistic at that point. But do I have a problem with the theoretical future down the line if steps are taken towards achieving it, where the West Bank are all Israeli citizens and we still have a Jewish majority? I'm theoretically okay with that, depending on how it's done.
Theoretically.
Yeah, now you know how I feel when you say like if and if. That's also kind of.
what do you think happens when? Okay, let's say you implement this policy of the settlements. They expand in response to terror attacks. What's the likelihood that gets them to accept an emirate or a Bantustan?
Immediately zero, but over time, I would say it would be like let's take what we can get. Because right now they're rational considerations. They really think that they will have the entirety of the West Bank. Which by the way, being completely honest with you, forget about my stance for a second. I think after October 7th, even like the 242 or 67 like borders thing, they're not going to have it. Like Israelis are way too dug in right now after everything, because like all their worst paranoid suspicions, even a lot of leftists. I mean, you've experienced this, Loner Box, like Israeli leftists and centrists. My friends, who I never would have believed that they would say things like that. They're basically like, no, they can't have a state. Like a lot of majority opinion in Israel feels that way right now. So once they see, the problem is, I think part of this would have to come with a pairing of like the world as a whole, or at least the West being like, yeah, you kind of have to give up on a 67 like West Bank state. If that happened over time and they'd be like, listen, the Emirates kind of state or like the local Bantustan state or whatever, idea is like, well, at least we'll have some kind of like economic integration. At least we'll have some kind of, political autonomy on a micro level. They'll be like, it's better than like just continuous terrorism forever. I think after a decade or two of this policy, like, yeah, the percentage would be much higher. And it would be a situation of like, yeah, this sucks. We lost everything. But at least we can have like stability now. They wouldn't be happy about it. They wouldn't be thrilled.
What happens if they say fuck this? Because again, a lot of these people will be people who grew up in those conditions, right? I think that's missing out for that as well, is that you have different people at different stages of their lives, and to some people that'll be what they grow up in. Is that like kind of punishment? What if they just
But
say
to be
fuck
clear,
this? We're just going to keep fighting. What happens next? Because that is like 99.9% what happens. But yeah, what happens next?
same approach that we take currently to terrorism in the West Bank, we take to terrorism in the whatever, the Emirates West Bank. Similar one, maybe harsher though.
So what changed?
I think most of the
Yeah,
principalities. It also depends on which tribe. A lot of them would actually just like not be
What do you mean
interested in
tribe?
terrorism.
yeah,
What?
but then the government is functionally no different to the one that you have now.
Can you elaborate on the tribe part?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, different. I think I told you. Like you have the Jabaris, for example, in Hebron, and you have the Aunis. I might be pronouncing that wrong.
They're
Forgive me if I
treated
am.
as families now. People don't look
When I
at the
say
clans.
tribe, I mean like family.
I know,
Like,
but
whatever
I
word you want to
understand.
use.
I understand, but there's family and there's clan, and I know this because I have a family and I have a family name that is my government family name, and I have a clan name. We don't treat clan names like the way or clans like we used to in like the before the Nakba, for example. The clan names are insignificant, pretty much. It's just like another family name, and they don't have any cultural aspects anymore. They used to be an identifier because we didn't use family name because we didn't have fucking IDs, for example, and shit like that. Well, some of us did, not all of us. But we used to use them as identifier, but not anymore. We don't use them identifier unless like someone is with the same government name, or government family name, but he's from a different clan.
What's your
So,
point?
like, there's no aspect to like the tribal thing where like one would agree and one wouldn't. It doesn't make sense. Like, why would you even bring a tribe into this conversation?
Wait, I'll use different words so it's like less semantically assailable. Some parts of the West Bank, some of the Emirates, if you will, would be more peaceful, and they just like, we just want peace. We don't want, and the clan heads would manage all the, like they would also be responsible for, well, like not instigating terrorism and stuff. But then other ones who would be unruly, yeah, they would suffer more significant consequences. Maybe in that case,
Yeah,
like
but
on an individual or like micro collective level, you'd have deportations and stuff like that. Response to terrorism.
deportations to where?
Yeah,
You'd have agreements with some states that would be willing to take them.
there's no instance. Why
Which
would it
states?
say
For the first time ever as well.
Nobody-
What
Yeah,
what
but
That,
state
that
would
could be
it?
arranged.
there's no-
That could be
There's
arranged.
nobody that wants anyone in the West Bank. Look, all opulent. I kind of sympathise with what you're doing, which is that you're trying to find a way for Israel to be a country in the Middle East without being a Middle Eastern country. But the problem
You
is
laugh,
that
but
all of the other peoples around them are Middle Eastern peoples. So that, like, to I've heard it suggested before, for instance, that what Israel should do is it should have the 2008 offer of Ehud Olmert, and then it'd say every terror attack, instead of responding with military force, we're going to have a ribbon cutting ceremony and annex an acre of land. And the problem is the people that they're dealing with are still Middle Eastern people, even if the solution that they're imposing is not a Middle Eastern solution.
During the Gaza plan, there was not plan. It was literally not actually a coherent policy because they didn't release it or didn't implement
you
it.
mean they just
They were-
pulled out?
No. No, I'm not talking about that. They floated the idea after this current war at some point to have like Congo or African countries or whoever take in like deported Gazans. I'm just saying if we wanted to arrange that with other countries, we could. That's not logistically impossible.
Okay, look, I just
It's,
realistically.
it's theoretically possible, and not many countries want Gazans. And
No, hold on.
Israel
It's
would
No,
not.
they
probably
wouldn't want them,
pay
but they would
or
be like
It's not even about
incentivized to do
Gazans
so.
or West Bank. You're talking about, hey, these bad apples from this group of people. Can you guys take them? Why would any country agree?
No. Like even I told you, there are African countries that were willing to take in even more than what I'm proposing.
Do you think that's ethical?
If you can't exist somewhere without committing violence against like the neighboring states or population,
Okay,
I don't think that exile is
demolish the.
unethical.
Okay, are you okay with
Also, what they were
demolishing violent
also Sev,
settlements?
Sev, what they were talking about when it comes to African countries was those who voluntarily wanted to leave being paid for by Israel to leave to African countries that were voluntarily willing to take
Oh, you
them.
mean
It's very
migrants that
difficult to
weren't
argue that.
citizens?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult to argue that what they were suggesting is unethical.
No, also again, if you won't say that I can only do this policy if I also deport like settlers who are violent for just provoking violence against Palestinians for no reason, I would be fine. If that's like we have to do that in concordance with each other, that anyone who like disturbs
Listen,
the peace is deported, it's fine.
One of the biggest problems Israel has right now is punishment for action changes depending if you're Palestinian and if you're Israeli. If an
Yeah, but this
Israeli
isn't an argument you can use against Opulent because he's willing to make the copay.
hold on, let's see his argument instead of you making it for him.
No,
okay?
he's saying
No,
he's
I
willing
said
to have
I'm
the
willing
same.
to deport anyone
He's willing to have
regardless
the
of
same.
national
Yeah,
origin.
he's willing to have the same consequences felt
He
by
could
Israelis doing the
okay,
same
but
thing.
here. The problem I have with this, he keeps saying, I am willing. But whenever
Obviously,
I
this
talk
whole
about
thing
Yeah,
is
because you-
theoretical. I'm not in the
hold
government.
on,
Like
I know. And when I talk
Seb,
about the
Seb.
side of things from my side, he's talking about that's not reality. That's not reality.
No,
That's
Seb,
the problem I
you're
have with this
debating
argument.
him. Yeah, but you're not debating Israeli policy. You're debating him.
Okay, sure, but he wasn't fucking debating the Palestinians on the ground. He wasn't debating them. He was debating me, and he was talking about how what I'm saying is not true, and the counter. But he was giving like bullshit counter examples to me that didn't make sense.
The counter that I would have, for example, to what Opulent is saying, is something like that's not a policy that's going to be brought up by the Israeli government and probably wouldn't be popular with large amounts of the Israeli population. I don't even think a plurality of Israelis would support it. And that's a similar counter to what he was giving, which was to you, which was that you don't have a suggestion that a majority of Palestinians, not like in what would be a nascent state of Palestine, would support. You have something that's kind of like fairly moderate Israeli Arabs would support. It's the same criticism.
Wait, no, the what's it called? The steps to a two-state solution. Do you think only the Israelis would support that? Why would the Arab Israelis support that?
Okay, let's relitigate this then. What were your steps for a two-state solution?
I said my solution is probably to go into a two-state type of solution that has steps to have a confederation type of thing like the European Union, so we didn't have to kick out the settlers out of their homes. Because here, whether you like it or not, kicking out like how many is it now? 800,000 in the West Bank. That's gonna cause a lot of fucking problems. And not just
but in reality, I mean, if you were going to remove settlers, what you would do is you'd have land swaps for settlement blocks. So you could discount about 85 or 90% of the settlers who are settled in Ariel, Gush Etzion, and Ma'ale Adumim.
Sure, yeah, but you're not gonna fucking dismantle Ariel, for example, and Ariel is very deep, and there's probably, I would say, just even looking at a map quickly, I can see probably 20 Palestinian villages that are closer into Israel than Ariel is. Which are they going to be included into as Israeli citizen? No, but Ariel is like
what you do is this is why in the 2008 offer suggested by Ehud Olmert and Abbas, it contained 5%, 5.8% of Israel becoming an addition to the West Bank in a new state of Palestine, and Israel annexing Ariel, Ma'ale Adumim, and Gush Etzion. Because you couldn't kick 750,000 Israelis from their homes. What you'd have to do is retain the bits of Israel that contain 90% of Israeli settlers, which are the three blocks.
I understand. The problem is, again, do you think Israel would be willing to take the Arab villages that are like closer to Israel? Like here, if you look at the map, you'll know what I mean. There's Misha, there's not Safa. There's a few other fucking villages right before Ariel on the same fucking road. If you go into Ariel, you'll see these villages, and you can take what's it called? Take the exit to them. They are closer to Israel by a significant amount than Ariel is. If they're gonna annex Ariel, a part of Israeli territory, they're gonna have to take these Arab villages with them. They cannot take them out with them. So like
They would probably
this is-
only need a secure road going in and a secure road going out. But they were willing to accept that in 2008. Whether they'd be willing to accept that now after
the
October
borders
7th
are
is
gonna
not
look
genuinely
super
uncertain.
fucking retarded if that's how it.
Yeah, the borders in all kinds of places look super fucking retarded. The question is whether they work.
Can I ask Lonerbox a question?
Yeah.
What do you actually support viably?
On Tuesdays and Thursdays. I don't like Tuesday seems to be the one that makes sense now. It's not going to be like married to the 67 borders, but something along those lines. I think if that becomes unfeasible and Arabs start demanding voting rights, I think they're just going to have to get them. Like, there's no other way. I don't know. But I'm not ideologically committed to any particular solution.
You understand, like, I'm really not trying to ask this in a condescending way. Like, you follow this conflict very closely. You understand why it's like very frustrating for us too, and why we don't really know what to do. I feel like every single thing leads
Yeah.
to problems. Okay. Because sometimes like the Israeli frustration gets like reframed as like, oh, you could just hate them. You're all like racist against them. But it's really I'm not denying that is the case for a lot of people. But you can't deny that like we also just don't know what to do. We don't trust like a lot of the more mainstream solutions.
Yeah. Which is why if you don't know what to do, personally, I would suggest don't do things that are destructive in an irreversible way, like expanding settlements. That's kind of where, yeah.
Wait, but do you understand the logic of when we withdraw settlements, we also get violence?
No. You get violence
In
either way.
2005?
That's not okay.
No,
It's hard
seriously,
to.
explain
It's hard
it.
to. I'm trying to explain the fact that I don't agree with the Gaza pullout. I don't agree with unilateral action from Israel. I'm not one of these fucking lefties who's like, Israel just stop, end the occupation, just end the apartheid now. Click your fingers. Like that's not what works because if you unilaterally withdraw, you let groups like Hamas who preach violence to end the occupation, they take credit for it and they boost their popularity through the fucking roof. No, so I don't support unilaterally taking down shit.
Okay.
Freezing settlements is different. Even a settlement freeze, I feel like even that would have to come with some kind of partner on the other end. But at least a freeze is like, that's not a withdrawal. But if you're going to withdraw settlements, then yeah, there needs to be a party on the other end that's agreeing that with you in exchange for something. I don't think Israel should
And
unilaterally do shit. Yeah.
do you think we had a partner for something like that during this last 1 year? Like
Nope,
after
not right
the Camp
now.
David?
But with Hamas gone, I would like to think after that, hopefully something comes out of it. Who knows? I think it might be the case that Palestinian society might need to come under some kind of technocracy before that, whether it's like foreign powers like Qatar or Saudi or any of those people, like they've already made suggestions like this of having technocratic leaders leading the PA so that they can actually negotiate with Israel in a more practical way than Palestinian leaders have. But don't know.
Do you think they support that?
Yeah,
Palestinians
I think
accept
that
that?
we
They're not
must
gonna
do
like they might or they might not, but they don't really have that much of a choice, right? But at least if that's happening, they're being represented by someone who's not like Israel. So
Okay.
I mean, all these countries like around Palestine were handed over to kings and dictators who didn't represent the majority of the people either. So
Yeah.
And who probably still don't, despite the countries remaining relatively stable.
yeah, like I don't think a lack of elections is going to be a very high priority issue for Palestinians as long as they feel like they're getting represented towards some kind of like statehood or something like that.
I mean, in this region in general, like democracy is not really a thing. So
Well, even with the PA,
in
who did they
regions where
take with
there was
Arafat? Like
amazing-
even though the PA had elections, it was like they took someone who was an unelected leader for like decades, like with Arafat.
yeah, no, I agree with you on this point.
even in regions where democracy was becoming more common, like Far East Asia in the post-World War II period, America had South Korea in military occupation for 30 years before the first election.
The problem with the words like occupation, I'm not saying it's not an occupation. It obviously is, but like it makes it seem like the issue is just the checkpoints or something. And like once you remove them, everything will be fine. But you really can't.
No, I don't mean to say that there's an easy
No, not
solution
you,
that
not you,
isn't
not you.
what amounts to informal occupation, or at least occupation, but not defined in the Monteverdi sense. But to say that it's an occupation is obviously true also.
No, I agree. I was more talking like to Loner. Like, I don't really
sorry.
know. No, it's fine. It makes sense. You've sorry as well. Yeah.
Steph, what is your
Good
solution in your
situation.
mind?
I gave my solution. Lonerbox didn't like it.
No, I asked Sam.
Sav's not here. Hang on. Sav's a two-stayer, I think. But
Sav's now. Yeah, there you go.
What, Loner? What do you need?
who is are people in there wanting to talk? Because I feel like there's already a bunch of pro-Israel people in there, and I know the ones in the fucking weight room are as well. So I don't know.
Real. I was just explaining to Real David because that's the guy that said the Nakba was bullshit while talking to Destiny. So I saw him and I wanted to talk to him a little bit.
We can
David
bring
said
him in
that?
if you want. Okay, I
What
just
is
need a show of
your-
hands in here before we have that conversation. So who in here thinks the Nakba was bullshit? Anyone?
It's a little
Nah.
bit less nuanced than I would say, but essentially.
Okay, that's
Essentially.
one. Okay.
What is it? What does that mean? Like the Nakba happened?
yeah,
sure.
what that
Uh,
means.
What
There was
does
no
what does that even mean?
that the Palestinians weren't expelled. That they left because they
No,
wanted
no.
the Jews to be
There
able
was
No,
to.
but some
Palestinians
were,
that-
some weren't.
Well,
Like
Well,
must
he,
be
I
100,000.
asked. Well, hold on. I asked him to elaborate, and this is what he said. He said that that they weren't expelled, that they left because they wanted the Jews to get destroyed so they can come back.
Okay, he
That
can
was
come
true
in.
for some of them. That was true for some of them.
What
That's
percentage would you
never-
say was true for?
Oh my!
It was 500,000 versus 200,000. No.
What the
No,
fuck?
where the fuck did those numbers
Where?
come from?
I've
What?
never
It
heard
was-
those numbers before.
Hold on. No, okay.
In
I'm
answer
just
to where
getting
those
those numbers
numbers
from
come
Benny
from?
Morris. It was 500,000 who left either on the orders of Arab generals fleeing from war, like a combination of
also-
those factors, and then it was 200,000 who got expelled.
That is
by
a
Zionist.
misrepresentation of what Morris said.
Okay, please correct me. I'm not gonna argue with you.
500,000 doesn't account for people who primarily left because they thought they were making way for the Arabs to destroy the Jewish armies. The majority of them were just because of the attack on the village, right? Like the attack on the village made them flee because the village was being attacked, and some of these villages in 48 had like fucking air raid shelters and shit like that, or like shelters to deal with mortar fire and shit like that, and also a combination of the assault plus them knowing what happened in other villages like Deir Yassin and shit like that. So yeah, that's the majority of them were people fleeing because of either fear, because of general reasons, flee during war. About 50 out of 400 villages to do with direct expulsion, whisper campaigns accounting for maybe 15, 20. 6, the primary reason was orders from Arab
Six.
radio.
Wait, did I hold on a second? Did I not
Would
say the
you call
combination
that
of factors?
expulsion?
Yeah, you said the combination of factors, but you were saying it in the affirmative of the initial claim, which was that people
Oh,
fled
no,
because
no,
they
no.
wanted
I
to watch
obviously don't
the
agree with that.
Jews get destroyed.
No,
Okay,
no.
gotcha.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that.
Okay,
Well,
I'm sorry.
here,
I just
also,
fought
if
a fucking
Ellie-
straw
No, no,
man.
my bad.
Hold
okay.
on, Ellie, if you don't think that's expulsion, then the Mizrahi Jews weren't expelled from Arab countries.
Ooh.
Well, maybe there's an argument there, but
It's an argument if it happens to the Jews, but it's not.
the word expulsion has
can't-
a heavy
You can't
weight
make the cases
behind
that
it, right?
you can't make the cases that it wasn't expulsion of Jews who lived in what became the West Bank under Jordanian control.
That you
There were,
call that
I mean, there were only
expulsion,
You can make that
Yeah,
expulsion,
they're only-
yeah, sure, but I'm talking about other Arab countries like.
Wait, actually,
Iraq.
whoa, hang on. Did the Arab Legion have a policy of expulsion, or did people
I
just
don't
flee
think
the
they had a
fighting?
policy. I don't think they had a
I
policy.
don't
The
It was like
combination of the two is the answer, I believe.
Are you?
It can't
What do
be
you mean,
a
a combination of
if
the
there's a
two?
policy. It's yes or no.
I think it's both
No,
true
no,
for the Nakba
Let me
and for
clarify.
the expulsion of
Let me clarify. I don't
Jewish
believe
in
that they had a
Arab
policy, an explicit policy of expulsion, but I believe that there was some expulsion and some people that fled as a result of the war.
Yeah, that would make
Well,
sense.
then, yeah,
That's how I understood
yeah.
it.
Yeah, not the.
I didn't mean that it was like both an explicit policy of expulsion and that it was some people that fled.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
here
but
again,
we must remember it wasn't as a part of a war, right? The expulsion of Jews in Arab state.
well, hey, are we
No, I
gonna
meant
use-
expulsion of Jews
but
in the
here,
West Bank during
were the Palestinians a
Israeli
part of the war? Were Palestinians fight? Majority of the Palestinians expelled. Were they fighting in the war?
majority of Palestinians. Well, it's
Well, I mean, it
probably
doesn't matter.
no.
Did you forget that,
Not so
a lot of the
no.
reasons why they left had to do with like the anti-Semitism and like the literal culture? It wasn't like the two militias or
I'm talking
armies
about
saying you have to leave
Palestinians here,
this
not-
land. It was like, get out or we're going to lynch you. Like what?
No. This is
No, we were talking about Palestinians. The question was about Palestinians.
This question was
He
about
asked, were
Palestinians.
the majority of Palestinians who were
Because
expelled
here
fighting
the reason for their expulsion and why it's justified compared to the what's it called, the Jewish Mizrahim from Arab countries, is that there was a war during this time. What's it called? So I were they a part of the fighting? As far as I'm aware, there was only 3,000 Palestinians fighting under Hajj Hussein, the Grand Mufti, and even then they were arrested by Jordan and fucking what's it called? Removed by Jordan.
Yeah, but I mean those weren't the only fighters on the Palestinian side.
Who are the other fighters? As far as I'm aware, the amount and number to
Jordanians,
3,000.
Syrians, Egyptians.
Okay, but they're not. I'm talking about Palestinians here. You're talking about Palestinians. Why are we?
I don't think when
Wait,
you
hold on a
compare
second, hold on.
Jews,
Well, I'm
Mizrahi-
sure there.
I don't
I'm
think
sure there was
comparing-
resistance from the towns and the villages.
the
No.
argument against this is not
Hold on.
to say
I want to
It's
hear.
not
analogous.
just- It's not
I
just
wanna-
that they fought in
it's
war. It's
not-
also those villages were involved in like the Hebron massacre and the other massacres in the 20s.
You
and
can't.
30s.
There's
Like,
no evidence for which villages were involved.
Doesn't
in
Morris
the mass-
literally say? Doesn't Morris literally say this?
Which mass? It says all these villages. What do you mean? There was like 600 villages erased.
They kept are we talking about like villages that were expelled because people in the village were responsible for the Arab revolt? Is that what we're talking about? Because they kept
Yeah,
lists.
yeah.
They kept lists of the names of people who took part in the Arab revolt.
Yes,
but,
yes. That's what I'm
yeah,
talking
okay.
about. Yeah.
Those are people who were killed. Who just they found them and shot them. But the rest of the villages
Oh, okay.
often were
They
just
were expelled.
the entire village was expelled. I think that's often what happened. No, I don't think they went.
But
Like, usually, if they went into
who expelled them?
who expelled them, it depends on when. But usually, if it was an expulsion, it would have been by the Haganah or Irgun or Lehi.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, specifically, I guess the most like controversial ones were from the Lehi and Irgun, right?
The controversial ones, and not necessarily. No, what the most controversial campaign that I saw was Operation
The
Hiram, right?
yeah.
Like 9 massacres, explicit orders to expel the villages up in the north by Moshe Carmel. I thought that was probably the most controversial one. That came from the Haganah.
Yeah, I mean, it was. That's what I'm saying. It was on both sides. Like, it was just. What I mean, it was both sides of massacres. Like, you'd have like there was no like war crimes or just like every crime. Like, if you attacked a convoy, you would just like destroy, kill everyone in that convoy. There was no like civilian militant. Like, the way we look at warfare now did not exist back then, and we're using standards from now for like 100 years ago.
I can even make
almost.
that point more in your favor. I can say compared to most wars in the 40s, 50s, like the Nakba was actually fairly well behaved. Compared to World War II, yeah, like obviously, like even to this day, you could still make the argument that Israelis and Palestinians, when it comes to war crimes, and especially things like rape, that's a conversation now, seems to be that historically, compared to a lot of these wars from the 20th century, like Israelis and Palestinians just don't rape each other that much. I don't know. But yeah, I can make that argument, but still, what your point seemed to be that the Nakba was bullshit because that means you're not denying what happened. You're just saying, yes, these were war crimes that happened, but what, it was more normal back then?
No. So, all right. First of all, when I said the Nakba is bullshit, I'm not denying that it happened, that there was people who were expelled. I'm denying that the connotations that are like that arrive with the meaning when people bring up Nakba. I think that's bullshit. Because sure, there were explosions, but it was definitely on both sides. And second of all, I just want to reiterate that Egypt has never like condemned anything. Jordan has never condemned anything. The year that the IDF was formed, like after 48, they or maybe in the same decade, they called the Lehi, they called them terrorist attacks. They've condemned a lot of the massacres that they've done. Like, there's like a level of like of a moral diffusion that does not exist in the Arab world. They don't care. They don't give a shit. They just like everything. No one talks about what they did. It's always just like the Nakba, the Jews, and nothing about what the Arabs did.
So if you're saying if you're saying the mainstream Arab narrative on it is bullshit, that's kind of your take, more or less.
I mean, in the way that like no one fucking talks about it or condemns it or says anything. Yeah.
Because I still get the impression, maybe it's not the 1-to-1 levels, but like, aside from the new historians, I feel like a lot of the mainstream Israeli narrative on it is bullshit as well, right? Because they tend to say that people just left of their own accord. They left because radio broadcasts told them to. They left because they left because they wanted to leave space for the Arab armies to go and fucking take people out, and then they could just come back. Like those being priority reasons for people leaving is not true either. People left because they were shitting themselves. They were scared. They had no leadership. They had no fucking military. They had they knew that massacres were happening in other villages, at least 20, 25 of them. So
I agree. I mean, I guess
we're reasonable person will argue that they fled because of the
I agree that there's explosions on a level, but I would not call it ethnic cleansing, which is what Seb was trying to call
I mean, ethnic cleansing is not like an official legal term, so that debate is retarded because everyone's got a different definition of what ethnic cleansing means, right?
Isn't there intent?
Doesn't have
I
because it's not a legal term. It's not like
can't let that-
genocide or anything. It doesn't have any. There's no special desire for intent for ethnic cleansing. If you want to say there's intent, wouldn't that mean that there were some ethnic cleansings because there were like 50 plus villages where people literally went to Arab
Yeah,
villages
but you
and
can't
fired
really
fucking
prove that in
gunshots over
policy.
their
You can
heads?
bring up planned valid.
Wait, hold on. But intent doesn't equal policy. Just because there's no policy doesn't mean there's no intent.
Ethnic cleansing doesn't need
but
policy
that's,
either.
That's
Like,
that's a subsidiary. If you have like soldiers going in Gaza right now, and you have a few cases of like, okay, they did some fucked up shit. That's not policy. That's not they're genociding them.
That's still that.
no, you're
soldiers
confusing.
intend to do
You're
something,
confusing.
but what the-
You're confusing ethnic cleansing, which is not a legal term, which was actually came up to downplay a genocide, versus genocide, which is a legal term with special intent. I don't know why you're ascribing the thresholds of genocide to ethnic cleansing. That's your definition. And that's fine because there's no definition.
use the
It's just
word
as valid as
genocide,
anyone
but
else's. Yeah.
I use the word genocide, but I'm trying to my point that I'm trying to get across is that I mean, you have to really look at policy and what was like being told to do at the time than just like random like off skirmishes events that happened. Like there were what like 300 members in Lehi, like.
Okay, so you're contrasting again. It wasn't just Lehi; it was the Haganah as well, who carried out some of the worst operations of actually orders to ethnically cleanse villages or to expel villages. But you're doing the same thing, though, right? You're saying, well, there's policy versus random acts. It wasn't random acts. There was a very clear, if not policy, there was a very clear understanding from the top down that Arabs had to go. That it was easier to win the war with less Arabs kicking around. That it was easier to govern villages and towns like Haifa if the Arabs were gone. That was the understanding that was given. And it was certain cases where there were orders given. Rabin signed an order that said kick everyone out of fucking Lida and Ramla, most likely because Ben Gurion told him to say it. Operation Hiram was on paper expel the villagers. So like we know this is in the documents. So you're doing the same thing. You're just doing it in the opposite direction. When you say just random acts in Irgun and Lehi were only 300 people, like no, that's simplifying it as well. It's downplaying it as well.
It's very clouded because they were doing the same thing. So it's not like it's not like cutting a paper in half. Like there's like shit going on both sides, and the only difference is that Israel won and they created, you know, like if it was vice versa, no one would give a fuck.
Yeah, but what are we trying to describe? We're trying to describe the like if you're just trying to describe the outcomes of the war and the harm that was done. Well, the fact is that the 700,000 Arabs, that's like half of the Arabs living there. 50% of the Arab population of historic Palestine got displaced and thrown out of their fucking homes. Like that's. You can say, oh, well, it happened on both sides. It would have happened more if the Arabs did it, if they won the war. But okay, that's not what we're saying, though. We're just describing what happened. And it seemed like even just in this conversation, your instinct is to go in the opposite direction, to say no policy, actually just random acts by the Irgun and Lehi. But that's not true either.
Oh, but like, for example, like the Deir Yassin massacre, I'm pretty sure the Haganah literally condemned it.
Yeah, they did.
The week or day after.
I don't know who you're arguing with. Of course I do. Yeah, they didn't want to do it. One Haganah official wanted to fucking shoot the Irgun and Lehi guys for trying to do that. Yeah. But they allowed them to do it. They signed off on it, even though they knew that these people were a bunch of fucking retarded 18-year-olds with no military experience. So yeah. At the end of the day, I don't know who you're arguing with, though, right?
I guess I agree with you on that, but I guess back to what I was saying with the connotation of the Nakba, the reason I guess I'm so against it is just because, like, again, you have to understand the connotation that I hear when you say Nakba. I hear like Jews, like the connotation I get is like Jews went in, just kicked everyone out, and that was it. That's how it's used.
That is not,
David.
Wait, so did you just assume everyone's position?
Ooh.
Bro, I don't think. Do you guys think that the majority of pro-Palestinians are like sitting in Discord researching politics? Like, no, most of these people are dumbasses who have a very strong voice.
But you're the same thing. You just called it bullshit and just fucking threw it out the window with no real explanation or anything.
The connotation of it is bullshit, and that's because it
But
is.
here, hold on. You can't say it's the connotation after saying that sentence. The Nakba is bullshit. No,
I said that to Destiny in like a stream like 2 weeks ago.
You said it.
Hold on, sit down. You're just taking it out of context.
Hold on.
He was like, so what do you think of that? He was just spitfiring questions. I was like, well, I think that I didn't even touch on it after that. Like,
okay, but I just asked you a second ago on the other channel. I said, oh, well, I remember you saying the Nakba is bullshit. You said the Nakba is bullshit. Why?
Yeah,
Hold on.
What did I say right after that?
You said that because the majority of the Arabs left. Because they
wanted.
No,
I literally
said that.
Two sentences. Sorry, did you forget the two sentences where I said like the Nakba did happen? I'm not arguing that. If you look up the Wikipedia and you see that, I'm not arguing that. I literally told you I'm arguing about the connotation, how it's used.
You started arguing after I told you that you were wrong about the 500 or like whatever the number you gave me.
Well, because I'm not
was-
sure I am wrong. All you said was 6 villages, and you took like a quote from Benny Morris, which I don't even know if it's true.
If you want us to
Uh,
look at it, we can look
what
at it
just
right
happened there
now.
was
Let's get it. Let's get him out. All right, the birth.
Loner loves
said,
these.
and then David
I do
responded
love
by
these.
something that Loner.
We're doing my favorite thing. Oh, we can get Jesse Irwin's map. Jesse Irwin, if you're here, send me the fucking map. All right, look.
Yeah.
What is this map? What is this
If you
map?
look at it's the fucking key for the decisive reason for why each village was abandoned for all 396 of them, wherever.
Oh, was
this
it?
is
Was,
useful.
You can
I
see
remember,
we've
I
got
think, was it the interactive one?
abandonment on Arab orders, influence of nearby towns fall, expulsion by Jewish forces, F for fear, M for military assault and settlement, W for whispering campaigns, psychological warfare by the Haganah and the
Whispering
IDF.
campaign.
Whispering campaign was
Okay,
when
so
they
that's
said,
like
"Get the fuck
so
out of your
you.
village, or we're gonna like we're gonna ram you. Basically, you're gonna get fucked up." That's
Hold
like
up, hold
whispering
up, hold up.
campaigns.
They're cut it. Okay, hold up. This is like a very you just said like 5 separate things that could lead to a whole bunch of stuff. You know, like
What did wait? What am I saying?
all right. Let me ask you. Can I give you a hypothetical? I just want you to answer. Okay.
I don't think you know where we're going with this, but okay, go on.
Yeah,
It's okay.
'cause
You can say it anyway.
you wanted to ask
Okay,
if
well, I
what
guess
I
this
said
is a
was true.
separate hypothetical. But let's say there's like a, let's say in like in a hypothetical scenario, there's due cause for a nation to to like a Casus Belli to go to war with another nation.
Hmm.
Do you think now that if that nation has refugees, oh yeah, this is actually Israel and Gaza right now. You know, they had the right to go to war on October 7th because of what they did. So the fact that there's refugees now and that they need to be refugees in like Egypt and the countries aren't taking them, is that are you expelling those dozens that need to now be refugees because of the war?
That wouldn't be a direct expulsion. No, an expulsion would be actually if you go to a particular area and tell them fucking leave, like don't come back, and fire gunshots over their heads to make them run.
And if you don't let them come back, right?
Yeah.
Well, why? How? What does that mean? Let them come back?
I don't know. I know what you're doing is you're hearing a description and you've probably heard it made by other people who attach moral prescriptions to that, and you are hearing the moral prescription and the moral normative statement where it's not actually there. We're just describing what happened. We're not describing whether or not Israel had casus belli in fucking 1948. Okay, they kind of did because they were gonna get destroyed otherwise. Okay, so we're just describing the primary reason for each village being abandoned. And there's like a list here. You got one is like here you got A for abandonment in Arab orders. You can look through the list of all the villages and find out how many A's there are. I counted
did you
them.
send it,
There
by
are
the way?
6. Right? It's on my. I can send you a link. It's in the chat. That's all
You
I'm
sent it to
saying.
me too.
Oh.
All I'm saying is that this idea, which dominated Israeli thinking for the longest fucking time, and kind of still does to a degree because the historians are not
does.
listened to by everyone, is that Arabs left because other Arabs told them to. That's not a. But
Yeah.
then it seems to be the case that that was a very minor reason for most of these places. Right?
To be fair, Loner, sentiment like believing that idea or notion or narrative is only popular among the right wing. It's not really popular among the.
Well, I don't think
left-wing
it's. I think okay. First of all, I just want to say that you cleared it up a bit because I guess I was really arguing a lot on like the morality, but I do digress and I do okay. So there was I agree with the facts that you said, but if you're now talking about like why in Israeli society that's a very apparent like way of thinking, my response to that would be is because again, like if you see my reaction to it on the other side, it's all based on the connotations. Like no one is really, most people are not clear like thinkers and look at situations like this. Like people just see the other side. Like what's your natural response going to be, right? If everyone is just like all the Jews went and expelled the Arabs, right? Your response to that is going to be like, no, they like this is just how it works. That Palestinians have it on their side. I don't think it's just like a defensive like mindset,
Yeah, and I understand that feeling, but at the end of the day, you have to be an intellectually honest. You have to be a man, okay, and you have to stick to the
Yeah.
facts. The problem is that
Facts over feelings.
you're saying one reason, obviously, which is why the Nakba is portrayed in its way, especially by the Arab states, because it's to sell a narrative that Israel came in with a premeditated, calculated, decades-long plan to ethnically cleanse the otherwise passive and friendly Arabs. Okay, that's their narrative. But at the end of the day, the reason that this narrative gets so confused is also because your guys or Israelis lied about it as well. Ben Gurion spent like years telling the rest of the world that not one single Arab was expelled. Okay, he used to say that a lot to Western leaders. He lied. And if in the decades leading up to the Nakba, he might not have been planning a policy of expulsion, but he was very much okay with it. He was very much happy with the idea of people leaving. Like, do you not deny any of that?
I mean, let's say I take what you say. It's not that I don't trust you, but I'm just saying, okay, I'll take what you say for granted. And if he did try, to cover it up, then I mean, yeah, obviously I won't deny it, but I mean, yeah, I think that there's a shit ton of stuff on both sides, and I'm accepting the ones on our side, the Israeli side, because there is a lot. I mean, most people don't even grow up in the narratives that Israelis grow up is like we offered them peace and they denied it. Like no one even gets into the nitty gritties of like what it was or like how like that's just like on both sides. That's just what how you grow up with.
Well, I guarantee you,
Jim-
you're going to have a much easier time, from my own experience, you're going to have a much easier time having those discussions if someone says something like the Nakba, like they ethnically cleansed all the Arabs, and you can just say like, well, okay, here's what I think happened, and yes, like a lot of atrocities were committed and war crimes, a lot of collective trauma was shared. Also, let's talk about why Israel felt like they needed to do that, and then you just get into it from there. I find that personally easier than just. Also, David, David, by the way, in case I wasn't clear enough when I said decisive causes of abandonment, okay? I know there were other villages where people were told to leave and they thought they were clearing the way, but it's not decisive causes. But for example, if you live in a village and you're like, well, the Arab radio broadcast are saying to leave, actually, leaving might be a bit safer because the Arab armies are about to invade and they're going to take the land back for us. Also, there's a fucking army advancing to us and firing mortars at the houses, and I need to get the fuck out of here immediately. What do you think of those as a decisive factor? Okay, fuck you. Sorry.
Not you, David. The other David. That's like
the David in chat.
Twat. Such a twat. Oh my god, he keeps
the
fucking
whole
bringing
time I
this...
thought you were talking to me. I was a bit confused.
No, he keeps bringing it up as if like being afraid to be massacred is not more important. Ugh.
By the way,
also, Sev, to clarify, okay, I want you to understand that number one, when I talked to Destiny a few weeks ago, we didn't even touch on the Nakba. I just said we were just going off a bunch of spitfire questions. I didn't even get on it. And number two, I want you to remember that I'm not denying a lot of the stuff that happened. I just live in a world and I live in a city, especially where there's a lot of like retarded anti-Israel sentiment that's like being hidden and being replaced by words like the Nakba and genocide.
I understand, but you don't have to be the retarded pro-Israel side. You could be an intelligent pro-Israel side instead of a retarded one where you're like, oh, the Nakba was bullshit. What's it called? No innocent Gazan. You don't have to be the opposite of them. You can be a better person than them.
Yeah,
sure.
and
I mean,
are there any of
to be
those people
fair,
on the
this
call?
these conversations are incapable of happening with like if I go to the university, if I go to campus in the UC where I'm at, these conversations are incapable of happening. It is not because
I understand. There's conversation that I cannot have in Israel. I cannot have in Israel. You are exactly what they respond to me, and they will never change their mind about how majority of the Arabs that were in here in 1948 that were expelled weren't actually expelled. They just left because they wanted all the Jews to be genocided. That's majority of how the right wing think, and they will never change their mind on that. Because if they change their mind on that, they will start doubting their own ideals and ideology on why they're not justified in what happened, because it will literally shatter their entire ideology if they acknowledge that. And I understand why they don't.
Not necessarily.
In a way, I don't agree with that fully, but yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Nakba brain rot. Come on, let's go. Who here is a Nakba denier? Raise your hand. Real David, why did you see your hand raised?
Oh, okay.
I don't have a hand. I lost it fighting in Gaza.
Good one.
First
off, I know you're too young to fight in Gaza.
American, by the way.
The reason Real David's hand's not raised is because we clarified before that he agreed on the history and thought that the politicization of the term Nakba was useless.
I can understand Real David's argument about the word Nakba being like a term that kind of in and of itself makes it a one-sided war. The idea is like a catastrophe that happened upon the Palestinian people and not like an actual war in which like there was two sides.
David, you are misunderstanding what it is. It's not
the
the
Nakba
war.
is specifically talking about the expulsion of
during the war. And I don't think they are denying. There is much denying
Well,
it.
didn't it
You can say,
didn't the term
David,
start from a
listen to me.
Syrian that was
Just
talking
listen
about
to
the
me
laws
for
of
a
war?
sec.
Just to clarify,
Yes, Abdi,
real
I
David
think.
wasn't denying any
Bro,
expulsions. He
what
was saying
happened
that he
is that
use of
Yeah, I mean,
when you
I'm
say
not gonna
Nakba,
go over this again. I already
clarified
went over
after.
this in like.
It's not. Again, this is another thing that's probably not useful to rehash. He clarified after that what he meant was he thought that the use of the word Nakba was useless in the way that
No,
it's
I
used.
know, but we're
no,
not
it's not
talking.
useless. It is the term we use for
No, but I
an
think you
event
guys.
that happened in our history. If you
Yeah,
wish to
yeah.
say it was politicized or anything, fine, say it. But you don't try to deny it or say, oh, it was not as
It's
bad. Like,
I
it
don't
was fucked
deny
up.
that there was fighting and
He-
explosions that happened.
He
I
denies the
understand that.
narrative
I'm just
of the
saying that the
narrativization
political,
of the Nakba.
or not political, the moral, like power that the word Nakba has and how it's used is one I disagreed with.
Well, here the reason you disagree with it is because you think when they say Nakba, for you the Nakba is the war. For us, we differ between them. Well, the war is something, and the Nakba is something. The Nakba is specifically referring to the expulsion of Palestinians. It's not referring to the whole
Sure.
event.
Okay. I didn't. I'm not denying that. I'm not denying this is what you guys like.
General
For you guys, you feel it's
understanding.
entirely fair and right to look at it that way. And I'm saying that for me, I disagreed with the connotation that it provokes. That's it.
By the way, I've been told before on TikTok that it's not actually the War of Independence; it's called the Nakba.
No, okay.
So,
good,
like,
good
I've
source,
had many
David.
people try to
that?
weaponize it as like the opposite.
Who
And
said that?
I'm just saying. I
David,
mean,
get
like,
off
listen.
TikTok.
If like if I were to argue with you, Sev, and you were to call, and you're talking about ethnic cleansing, I bet we could differ on like different definitions, and we could
no,
talk
That
about
would be
different
so
ways
much
it
fun,
happened.
wouldn't
But
it?
I'm talking about when you talk to the general populace about this issue, it's like completely it's a different conversation.
My opinions don't change if I'm talking to a smart person or a retarded person. I'm sorry, but like usually
You
I
might
will
want
always.
words that are universally accessible, to which the definitions are universally understood. That's the point.
I usually go by the same thing that happened, and as far as I'm aware, when I talk about ethnic cleansing, for me, ethnic cleansing, if you if you are afraid of violence and you had to flee because of incoming violence, you are getting expelled because without the violence, you wouldn't have fucking ran away or fled.
I have a question for you,
The
Sev.
same reasoning that I look at the Mizrahi fleeing Arab countries as expulsion as well, because without the violence, they wouldn't have left. Who the fuck would leave all their lives behind just to go to a new fucking state that's called Israel? It's expulsion as
A
well.
lot of people actually.
Before that-
maybe not in the Arab countries. I mean, there were a lot though, and in the North African, hold up, in the like the North African countries. I mean, there was like a bunch of concentration camps or whatever with occupation over there. So a lot of them actually like in 1947 wanted to go fight in Israel, like without and they were native to the land. That was just, like just because of like a World War II and Hitler. But then if you get more into like Iraq, Syria, like those like where my family is from, and like Libya, then it's less then that's more of like you're saying expulsion. But there were a lot of sentiments to go fight for Israel for the Mizrahi Jews affected by the Holocaust.
This argument is not in your favor, by the way.
Yeah. By the way, before
because that's what usually pro-Palestinian people argue, that the Jews left on their own to go fight for Israel because they like Israel more than they.
I don't really fall into brackets of in my favor. I just fall into like what I believe. I'm not looking like, oh, this is not my favor. I'm saying that there were some Mizrahi Jews who were affected by the Holocaust and they felt like a national response to go fight for Israel. And then there were some Jews that like literally were just like expelled, like you said.
I understand that, but I don't think most people left their positions.
Give me 5 seconds to reconcile these two positions. There are a small number of push factors and a large number of pull factors that led Jews to leave Middle Eastern countries and go to Israel. There you go, done.
Which ones are
which? But then which by the way, I would also say the same thing can apply to the Nakba as well in terms of being push
David,
and pull factors.
You need to stop this conversation because you've been proven wrong about it like 100 fucking
Wait, when have
times.
I been proven wrong about anything about that?
No, there's no real number for how.
There's no real number for either of those. There's no real number about how many left from pull factors versus push factors in the Middle East either for the Exodus.
I'll ask you a fucking reasonable question. Are you more like? Hold on.
Sev, just give me a second.
Oh my god.
What proportion of people do you think left voluntarily versus non-voluntarily, David? Of Palestinians?
There's gonna be 88%.
No, I'd probably say that like, damn. What do we mean by left voluntarily? I don't know. These are very.
So Arabs can kill the Jews. Like I said previously.
I'm calling people who, if there's a war
I
in
think
your
that
village, and
almost
you
all of
need-
these were like I think that almost all of these
Can't
were a
ask
mix.
questions
Like I don't think
and
there was
not
people
want
that
the
were like these were the. I know that only 15% were actually like expelled like by force, by gun. Others left from fear.
Well,
But
I have
then
a
the fear
question.
can also be
If
a
the
mixture
was there a
of.
definition of
pull factor? What was the
expulsion
pull
is just
factor?
leaving because of war, then technically everyone was expelled under your definition.
No, my
Well, no, the
condition
expelled
isn't
part would be
leaving
that they
because of-
couldn't come back,
They
right?
can't come back. That's
Well,
why
I mean,
that's why
I
Mizrahi
mean,
Jews are also expelled because they can't go
yeah.
back to the Arab countries.
Damn.
So so hold on. Let me understand. Your definition of being expelled in at the time was like infringent on the include on the like on them returning as well.
Yes, of course. Because if you can
necessary,
return,
but
you're
not
not expelled.
So let's say let's say they were let's say some
So the
families
point-
left and they
the point-
returned.
the
Let's say
point
that
is,
happened.
David,
They were not
Real
expelled.
David. The point is that if you can't return to the land, then that's an aspect that's necessary but not sufficient to constitute expulsion.
If you
I
flee,
mean, yeah. I guess
if
it's
you
just like a
left
very arbitrary
involuntary-
term. I guess, yeah, sure, they were
If-
expelled.
I don't think this is a bad
Okay.
term at all. By the way, I think I.
But David, you have to
understand the argument.
it's not, I guess we're putting. I know that me and you, but we're putting a lot of like moral weight on the word, and I'm it's hard for me too. But you have to understand that this is not that we're not talking like morally speaking right now, because that's pretty. It's again, it's you could argue a lot of stuff about that. We're talking about just like if you want to go off their definition, then sure, they were expelled. Like,
Okay, you could
to
say
clarify,
that saying the word
Okay, let me
expelled is
ask
going
a
to
question.
mislead someone to what actually happened, and I could understand that argument, and I think that's fine. But if we're having like a frank conversation, like they're not actually the term expelled because they weren't actually expelled because they left out of
Okay,
fear,
David,
but
David,
they were
I want to
practically
ask you.
expelled by the fact that they couldn't come
To
back. I think
clarify,
that.
Okay,
I
David, I wish to ask you about one thing. So, if let's say the town of Lod, it had a massacre, it had rapes, looting, and a death march. The villages near it fled out of fear. Do you think that was a voluntary departure, or was it an expulsion?
what's the difference? Why can't it be both?
Because
Yes,
if I
but
hold
does
the
it
voluntary
fall
hold on,
expulsion.
under
because,
expulsion in your definition?
hold on. If I hold
the
a gun to your
definition of expulsion excludes voluntary.
Okay, so let me ask David, does that constitute an expulsion, or is that, or did they just left?
David, answer.
Which David are you talking
Can
to?
I
Me or
answer?
him?
That's
No,
what
wait,
I'm
David.
Instead of
saying.
him?
He means the 12 tribes, David.
Yeah.
Wait, me?
Yeah.
Yes, you.
Wait, I wasn't listening to the whole thing. I thought you were talking about.
If a massacre, okay, I'll shortcut it. If a massacre happened,
Being asked of you is take an example. If we were to fictionalize a city or come up with a real one in which people are expelled from that city and people 5 miles down the road catch wind of that and leave as a result of that expulsion, do you consider that voluntary or an expulsion?
I don't consider that an expulsion.
No, I did not say that. I said that the town had massacres, had rapes, had looting. Will the people departing the town, the village or town next to it, be voluntarily leaving, or would that constitute an expulsion?
I don't go by binary of like it's either voluntary.
Okay, what is it?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, technically, if they're leaving by their own accord, it is technically voluntary. But I feel like voluntary versus expulsion is like a false dichotomy.
well,
Like,
David,
I believe there's like
something.
there's push.
I
I'm like
wish
this
to
is gonna
add
sound like
something.
corny. Like there's push and pull factors. Like that sounds corny, but at the end of the day, that's true for like
They
almost
are
all these
not push
people.
and pull factor in the scenario we
are.
just imagined. They are push factors exclusively. However,
They're not push
all of them
factors
are to the same
exclusively. There was
degree.
also the idea that it's more easy for someone to leave the territory if they believe that they're going to win the war and that the people that live next to them are no longer going to be there. So of course, if they leave, it's going to be more chill to just like really.
Would you say that? I just wonder if you would ever.
But that's a push
The
factor.
expectation would be that they were going to win the war.
I just wonder if you would ever say this
Yes,
for
that
any
was a
other.
fucking expectation in any war.
for any group of people, no, he wouldn't say it's just Palestinians because the Nakba looks really bad.
Yeah, because I wonder if you would say this for any other like actual organized like ethnic cleansing campaign, whether it's in like Yugoslavia or the ethnic Germans in Eastern Europe. Like again, it's the same case for all of them. It's like a small minority of people are directly forced out and massacred, and some people are massacred to push the other ones along. But most people leave because that stuff has happened to other people near them. I feel like that's just a normal part of expulsion campaigns, right? Like, but are those expulsion campaigns no longer? Are those people no longer expelled? Like,
I would say that
completely,
completely
or
matters
Okay,
on
so
like
I wish to
intent.
put it in another terms, so it
Well,
can
wait,
be
Loner, I have a
more
question.
understandable. If it was,
So wait,
if you
I have a,
knew that
Real David, wait a second. Let him finish his point.
if we knew that your village is getting massacred, raped, looted, pillaged, and you are going in a death march, will you leave voluntarily, or would it be an expulsion because you will fucking die?
It will be an
Otherwise,
expulsion, bro. What the fuck?
Yeah, the answer David wants to give is that it's not really either. It's kind of a middle category.
Yeah, because in reality is expulsion because it's not your choice.
okay,
to
so
leave.
so let me,
I just think that it's worth.
I
I just think
a
that
question about his definition. So would you
Okay.
say that that Ukrainian refugees who left the war, they were expelled by Russia? And before you answer that, would you say that the influx of Russian nationals who are like military age leaving so they don't get drafted, would you say they're being expelled by the Russian government?
were we asking
I
that
don't
too?
know. I don't
So-
know.
so
about
you-
what I'm saying.
The people who fled Crimea, it's hard to say because I don't know if the Russians were actually expelling people and then other people fled alongside. That's why I don't think it's the best comparison.
Let's
what
say
about
somebody
Russian
heard about-
nationals who leave so they don't get drafted?
heard about-
No, I
let's
would say
some
that's not
Ukrainian-
also an expulsion. I would say that's not an expulsion. That's not the same case as actually people around you are getting expelled and massacres are happening, and that's why you flee.
Yeah, how many?
Well, a
people
lot of
down there
Ukrainians
that
go,
were-
were massacres there.
Incentive to leave.
They fled because of massacres and rape that happened.
A Ukrainian person heard about what was going on in Bucha and decided that he was going to leave.
Yeah, can I make an analogy?
Yeah, I would say
for
that's an
David?
expulsion. Yeah, okay.
Can I make an analogy for David of 12 tribes and maybe he'll understand what Sundowner's getting at? David, if you and another person are standing right next to each other and I fucking shoot at the person next to you in the head and I say,
This is not
give
gonna
me
be
your
an
money.
accurate- This
Hold
is
on.
not going to be an accurate
Look,
analogy.
I'll say, hey, listen, give me your money. I'm not going to say anything else. Give me your money with my gun. Are you going to give me your money or not?
Your idea is going to be that there was a gun at the head of every like Palestinian village, but then
I
that
did-
just doesn't
I'm
work
not
in the narrative.
pointing
when
the-
many
okay, I'm
villages
not
were
pointing-
able
It's
to
a bit too
stand.
black and white.
Oh my God.
I
I'm not
Yeah,
pointing
I
the
feel
gun
like-
at you. I'm not pointing the gun on you. I'm not saying anything but else give me the money while the other guy got shot and you saw him get shot. So are you going to say that, are you going to give me the money or not? Just say it. Like, just say your answer. What would you do in that situation?
What's the analogy to?
Wait,
I'm
what?
confused.
I'm so confused.
I'm
how this
talking about
works.
the villages, one village getting massacred and then expelled, and then another village.
But then
next
you
door
see another
getting
village
rid of it
next
and
to you
then running
that's
it.
able to stay, and then does end up staying.
See, the problem's there, but I think with what you're doing is you're hearing a normative statement where David doesn't want me to make one, which is that he's saying it's an in between category where it's kind
except
of
the reason he's not making
Zev,
one.
you've
Hold
got
on.
to let me finish, please.
You've never
I'm
let
not
me
holding
fucking
on.
finish.
I'm not going to hold on whilst you're interrupting me.
Okay, go on.
The point, what David is saying is that there's a middle category where it's kind of half compelled and half not compelled. He's not making a moral statement about the legitimacy of that half expulsion. He's just saying that there's a middle category, and that saying expelled versus, and then having two categories, one is expelled and one is voluntary, doesn't do the nuance of the situation justice.
I
That's what he's
I
saying.
understand.
Okay,
I
so-
understand. Hold
we'll
on,
go
hold on,
to-
please. I understand what you're trying to say, that he is trying to be in the middle. But the thing is, he is trying to be in the middle with the intent of saying that the ones he's not trying to be full definition on it being involuntary. Is because he wants to have room for the statement that they left because they wanted the Arab armies to come in and slaughter the Jews.
I didn't say they all left for that. I'm just saying that was a
But that's
factor
the
as well.
reason.
I
That's the reason you're not giving a hard line on it. You want to open room for that statement.
I know
'Cause
I want to
already-
open room.
you
I
keep
believe that
mentioning-
was a factor for many people. I just don't know the
It's
exact portion. I
probably
know it's
a
20%,
minuscule factor.
80%, 60%,
I mean, okay,
40%.
so hold on. So I think a more impactful, like kind of argument in when we're talking about the Palestinians who were expelled under your definition, I think we should instead talk about the right of return than the semantics of like if they were expelled or not. Because I'm personally, if you talk about the right of return, I'm completely against it. I think it's absolutely bullshit, and I think it's like a dream that's never gonna be upheld, and it never should be.
Okay, I am one of those who the right of return entails, so I feel I can talk a bit about it.
Okay. Sure. I'm also opposed to the right of return.
Hmm?
Are you
I also have
Jewish?
already returned to my house in Hungary, you know, before the
Okay,
Nazis.
go for it. No, I'm not preventing you. But
Okay,
let me say.
this conversation's
Okay,
boring
what
as
I
fuck.
wanted to
Okay,
say.
I feel like there's
You're
probably
just kicking
some
people out.
there's probably some value in acknowledging the difference and trying to just factually acknowledge that there were some cases where there were direct expulsions and other cases where it was more indirect push factors like fear or military assaults and things like that. I guess if someone came to me and said, like, remember that time when 700,000 Palestinians were expelled from their homes, I'd probably be like, okay, whatever, like, we'll just move the conversation on something else, unless they're actually trying to say that it was like some direct, like, to imply the whole policy thing along with it as well. Because even if the majority of them were not directly expelled with gunshots fired over their heads, at the end of the day, there was a policy put in place after the war to use arms and the military to make sure that people couldn't come back. So I feel like expelled is probably okay to use in the context of that. But if you want to get to more granular and more detailed conversation, I think it's fine. At the end of the day, fuck this discussion. Can someone else bring up anything that's not this?